Welcome to Hannity's Show. After a big night in Iowa, the presidential candidates are now turning their attention to New Hampshire. Now, both Senator Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, they will be here with reaction tonight. But first, Senator Ted Cruz had a huge victory in Iowa, and as he told his supporters after his win last night, he plans to keep this momentum going. Take a look.
God bless the great state of Iowa. Tonight is a victory for courageous conservatives across Iowa and all across this great nation. We are going to do this together as a movement from the people. And I tell you tonight, Iowa has made clear to America and the world, morning is coming. Morning is coming.
Joining us now, the winner of the Iowa Republican caucuses, 2016 GOP presidential candidate, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, big congratulations to you. Three takeaways from my side. Number one, Iowa polls are horrible. Don't pay attention a lot to the polls. Two, you did the full Grassley, all 99 counties. Hard work pays off. Retail politics works. And on the Republican side, I don't think there's any denying the big loser last night is the establishment of the Republican Party. Thoughts?
Oh, look, I think there's no doubt about it. What we saw yesterday is the incredible power of the grassroots, that people are hungry for change. They're hungry for someone who will stand up to Washington, hungry for someone who will take on the Washington cartel, take on not just the Democrats, but leaders in our own party. We recognize we've got a $19 trillion debt. That didn't happen with just one party. It was both parties that bore responsibility. And people are fed up. They're fed up with, we won a tidal wave election in 2010, a tidal wave election in 2014, and Republican leadership is not following through on the promises. And they want a leader who will honor his word, who will keep his commitments, who will actually stand with the American people and stop Obamacare and stop amnesty and defend religious liberty and defend the Second Amendment. And last night, 2 nights ago, I watched your show, Sean, and every pundit on the show, every analyst you had, one after the other, and this was true on every show on every network, predicted there's no way for Cruz to win. There's no way for Cruz to win. That was the unanimous assessment of the pundits.
By the way, I didn't make that. I didn't make that prediction because
you did not. You did not. You're
in 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012, and now 2016, the polls have been wrong. So I had that in the back of my mind the whole time, and I kept telling everybody, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, what last night shows is the power of the grassroots. We had in Iowa over 12,000 volunteers, but we've got over 200,000 volunteers nationwide. I'm here in New Hampshire now. I'm going to be in South Carolina later tonight. And our volunteer army is incredible. And, I'll tell you one of the really important differences to keep in mind from prior election cycles. Last 2 election cycles, the winners of the Iowa caucus were good men, were principled men. But they came out of Iowa broke. They came out of Iowa without a national team to put them in a position to be able to capitalize and effectively compete to win the nomination. 2 days ago, the financial reports were filed of all the campaigns, and as of December 31st, our campaign had money in the bank almost as much as Jeb Bush, plus Marco Rubio, plus John Kasich, plus Chris Christie combined. I mean, that's unprecedented, Sean. The conservative is supposed to be broke, and the reason is because we've had over 800,000 contributions. People all over the country going to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. That is what's fueling this campaign. 800,000 contributions and 200,000 volunteers, and that's what last night produced the victory.
You have shown, you have probably the lowest burn rate of any candidate, meaning cash you took in that you didn't spend. Which certainly is going to serve you well as you now move into New Hampshire and South Carolina. I would assume now the polls are going to shift a little bit or somewhat in New Hampshire. My guess, my assumption, based on my past experience, it is you have been in a battle against the establishment in D.C. They seem to dislike you the most. If you watched any of the commentary last night, the consensus is, well, now they're going to coalesce behind Marco Rubio. They dislike you the most. They don't like Donald Trump. They're going to coalesce behind Rubio. What's your take if, in fact, you believe that's true?
Well, listen, I mean, I was laughing watching some of the media coverage, some of the interviews afterwards where everyone was saying, what do you think about the amazing third-place finish of Marco? And I just kind of laughed and said, gosh, is the media giving a tell there when the first thing you want to talk about is the amazing third-place finish. You know, we've been joking that in media world, bronze is the new gold. And, you know, they're going to push the themes they want to push. They're going to push the candidates they want to push. And the Washington cartel has its favorite candidates. But the grassroots are fed up with that. You know, as I observed in Iowa, as I observe here in New Hampshire, you want to know who actually will stand up to Washington, who will change that city, then ask yourself, who is Washington attacking? And they reveal themselves very plainly as they have throughout this campaign.
I think a case could be made that fully 60% of Iowa Republican voters voted anti-establishment, with you coming out on top. So it's going to be interesting to see politically whether or not they turn on you and they want to attack you. Certainly they didn't want to give you the credit for your win last night, which you deserve. So I guess, to me, it's almost bordering on pathological, and they seem out of touch with the real anger, frustration, maybe anger is the wrong word, righteous indignation at promises that have been made in elections that are not kept, like repealing and replacing Obamacare, like stopping executive amnesty, and that seems to be your big appeal, that you stood up in Washington when others wouldn't.
Well, look, you've got a lot of folks in Washington that are earning paychecks, lobbyists, and it's about entrenched power. And the idea of honoring the promises to the men and women who elected you, that they view that as almost quaint and parochial. You know, I'll give an example from last week that I thought was fairly stunning. Bob Dole, who is someone I don't know. I've never met Bob Dole. I don't know him personally, but, you know, obviously he's been around and in politics longer than I've been alive.
Establishment guy, right? A total establishment.
You know, Bob Dole last week was overheard talking to friends, saying he was very dismayed that former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg might run for president. And the reason he said he was dismayed is he said if Bloomberg runs, that could split the moderate and liberal vote with him and Hillary Clinton, and goodness gracious, that could elect Ted Cruz, which would be cataclysmic.
Wow. You know what?
Now, I want you to think, it sums it all up.
That is, well, his moderate views didn't win an election, Senator. And I know we've had moderate candidate in him and John McCain, and they don't win elections. And so
they keep losing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And you know what he's saying there, and it's the view of a lot of the Washington cartel, they would rather Hillary Clinton. They would rather bankrupt our kids and grandkids. They'd rather lose the U.S. Supreme Court for a generation. They'd rather see our religious liberty stripped away, our Second Amendment taken away. They would rather see Islamic terrorism continue to rise and Israel continue to be under assault than actually have a true Reagan conservative in the White House who believes what he's saying. That shows just how messed up Washington is, but it also shows why the frustration is volcanic. And Sean, what's so encouraging is what's coming together behind our campaign. We're seeing unity among the grassroots, among the activists. We're seeing that old Reagan coalition reassembling. We're seeing conservatives and evangelicals and libertarians and Reagan Democrats all coming together. And that's what it takes to win the nomination, but it's also what it takes to win the general, to beat Hillary or Bernie or whoever, and to turn the country around.
What are your thoughts about the Democratic primary last night? From my vantage point, a huge loss for Hillary last night, losing to a 74-year-old curmudgeon senator from Vermont who identifies as a socialist. They're in real trouble. What are your thoughts?
Look, the Democratic Party is tired and old and out of ideas. I mean, watching their primary is like watching the sitcom That 70s Show. They're recycling failed ideas on economic policies. The Obama-Clinton economy has been a disaster. We've got the lowest percentage of Americans working since 1977. Wages have stagnated, and the Democrats have no answer to that. And then on foreign policy, they have their heads in the sand like an ostrich. They won't even say the words radical Islamic terrorism. They don't have any view about how to keep this country safe, and it's why the American people are turning away from them. They recognize what they're doing isn't working. I believe we are headed to a 1980 Reagan landslide. We're headed, 2016 is going to be an election like 1980. Now, that won't happen if we offer Democrat light, but if we paint, as Reagan said, in bold colors, not pale pastels, every day at virtually every event we do, I have people coming up to me saying, I'm a Democrat, I voted for Barack Obama, I'm a union member, I've been a Democrat my whole life. I'm with you.
Senator,
day after day after day.
Talk about a general election. I agree with you. I think this is now emerging as a choice election, a general election.
Yes.
So tell me, because every time we get to this point in an election, everyone starts talking about electability and the electoral map.
Sure.
And historically, in the last few cycles, you've got to win Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, Virginia,
right.
New Mexico, Iowa, New Hampshire, Colorado, and it's a very tight map. Do you believe you can change the electoral map if you're the candidate for the Republicans?
Absolutely, yes. And the key is we've got to bring back to the polls the millions of conservatives who are staying home. We've got to bring back to the polls the 54 million evangelical Christians who didn't come out and vote in 2012. And we've got to bring back to the polls the Reagan Democrats, the blue-collar Catholics across the Midwest, up into New England. They're union members, they're gun owners, they're pro-life, they're Ohio steel workers, they're Michigan auto workers, they're truck drivers and electricians and mechanics. And that's what Washington doesn't get. That is the core of my base and my support. And here's one of the areas the Washington cartel gets it totally wrong. If we were to nominate a candidate who supports amnesty, whose views on amnesty are the same as Hillary Clinton's, that we should grant citizenship to 12 million people here illegally, the result of that would be the Reagan Democrats would stay home, because amnesty is a 70–80% issue with them. They're losing their jobs to people here illegally. They're seeing their wages driven down, and yet Washington desperately wants to say Wall Street and the lobbyists want amnesty, so that's the right position. That's right. How we lose.
Let me ask a final question. Ben Carson's campaign said that your campaign was telling people he was dropping out. And secondly, you and Donald Trump had a very, I would say, heated exchanges in Iowa, a lot of back and forth. He seemed gracious last night, congratulated you on your victory. Where do you stand on both those issues?
Well, listen, Ben Carson is someone who I respect and admire. Ben and Candy have become friends. We've had dinner together more than once, and he is a man of great character and integrity and principle. I really very much admire him. Last night, when CNN posted a news report that Ben was not continuing on to New Hampshire, not continuing on to South Carolina, but instead was going to Florida, our political team forwarded it to the members of our team. But unfortunately, they did not then forward the subsequent story that was Ben's campaign clarifying that he was continuing the campaign and was not canceling the campaign. And so I apologize to Ben for that. They should have forwarded that subsequent story. That was a mistake on our part. And as I said, my respect and admiration for Ben could not be higher.
Okay.
Concerning Donald, listen, I like and respect Donald. 6 weeks ago, Donald was singing my praises every day, saying I was a friend, saying I was terrific. Then our numbers started surging, his numbers started falling. And Donald began attacking me each and every day in personal and direct terms. And, Sean, as you know, you and I have talked many, many times. I have not responded in kind, and I don't intend to. I will continue to sing Donald's praises personally. He's bold, he's brash, I'm glad he's running, he's energizing a lot of people. Now, I do think policy differences are fair game, so I'm happy to have a conversation about Donald's and my differences on health care and his support for expanding Obamacare. I'm happy to have a conversation about amnesty, or happy to have a conversation about eminent domain. But I think the voters deserve more than insults and attacks. And so if he or others choose to continue with the insults, that's their prerogative. I will respond by singing his praises.
Senator, you're right. A first-place victory is significant, and you worked hard for it. Congratulations. 1 week from tonight, we're getting results from New Hampshire. The process now moves very fast. Senator Cruz, always appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. God bless.